Okay, guys, so we came to AMC to watch the new Batman movie that everyone's been talking about, and we have mixed feelings so far. Well, one of us has mixed feelings. So, okay, so we got the matinee view because we don't want it's spring break, so we're worried there's going to be a lot of people. So the matinee, I think, is best, and we're going to see it in the Dolby Cinema, which means it's like the special effects theater or the special effects room where the chairs move and stuff. So my thoughts before, I just heard a lot of people talking about it, and I always like to see like Marvel films or Batman, DC films. So I was excited to watch it, but he thought it was released too soon after the I guess Christian Bale, and then they had the other Batman, which was Ben Affleck, which I didn't care for that much. I didn't care for him as Batman. But of course, there were some good ones that came out with him as the Batman, but I don't particularly care for him as the Batman. What about you? What are your expectations, high or low?
Of this movie?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So my expectations of this movie is probably maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10. Like you said, I think they released this movie too soon. I think the Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan movies are still very fresh in my mind.
Yeah, so the theater's not too packed right now, which we prefer because it's more of like an intimate experience with you in the movie and not a lot of people chattering in the crowd. Okay. So this is the room 230. The chairs in the Dolby Theater are so comfortable because you can adjust them. You can put your seat all the way back. You can literally lie down if you want to. So to me, it's really nice. And you can see the difference between a regular screen versus the Dolby Cinema, the Dolby Theater sign. So, I mean, it's really nice, and you can see it's much brighter. Okay, so here Batman is kicking some butt already. And there's the Penguin. He's meeting Batman for the first time in this movie. And that's actually Colin Firth, which I had trouble believing that. Okay, there's Batman, and the Penguin's upside down, and the Batman's looking at him, and he's scared. And then you have the Riddler. He's trying to figure out who the heck this guy is. Here are some of the seats. Again, you can see the fine leather. Yes. Okay, so we saw the movie, and now I will tell you some of the things that I thought. First of all, it was definitely the darkest version of a Batman I've ever seen. I even joked and said it's like The Crow Part 2, which, I mean, I really liked The Crow. So definitely expect it to be, I'm not going to give away any of the spoilers, but visually, and then of course the character with Robert Pattinson as the Batman he was like a gothic version of Batman, which makes sense because Batman is like associated with, bats are associated with darkness and kind of concealing themselves and hiding from the light, and that's definitely some of the elements that the movie showed. I do feel like he was also the most depressed Batman. We don't see a lot of Bruce Wayne in this version. You see more of the Batman, which I also thought was interesting. I think the villains were also pretty interesting and pretty intense. You have the Riddler and a small bit of the Joker at the very, very end. And of course you have the Penguin, who wasn't too much of a villain in this one. I mean, there's like common villainry or whatever going on, like selling drugs and doing stuff illegally. But the one who's like murdering people left and right is the Riddler. And I'm not going to tell you a lot of the storyline itself. The plot, Doug will tell you more of this later, but the plot itself was really, really good. It started at 2:30 and the movie ended at 5:30. But so aside from the credits, it was about 2.5 hours, which I think is pretty good to cover. It covered all of, what the storyline was, and there were some interesting twists at the end. So I rated it a 7 out of 10. Also, kind of the way that they were filming it, the videographer used a lot of elements with darkness, and then they would show you a lot of bright lights on the screen, I guess to indicate like the the fight between the darkness and the light, because you, again, like I said, that's the most depressed version of Batman I've ever seen. But at the end there is hope, and he talks about, you know, having hope, and kind of you see a change in him. You see him more as a superhero, whereas the rest of the film, it's like him struggling to even make an appearance as Bruce Wayne. And at the end, I think he finally realizes that Gotham needs him as a superhero.
So I agree with. Okay, Deidre's making funny faces, so if I start laughing during this video, it's her fault. I agree with pretty much everything Deidre said. It was very dark. Did you leave off at?
It was very dark.
It was very dark. We're having some technical issues with our camera person. Anyway, it was very dark. Even his, I guess it was a mansion or upscale apartment, you couldn't really tell, was like retro Gothic or something. It was kind of odd, but anyway, it was, like she said, it seemed like they were really going for a dark version of Batman. I went into this movie with low expectations, extremely low. I'm a huge fan of the previous trilogy, the Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale. I mean, it's like I said before, it's like that's still fresh in my mind. But I love when this happens, when I go into a movie with low expectations and I'm pleasantly surprised. The story, the movie, everybody talks about the length of the movie. It did not feel to me like a long movie. There were parts where probably some people will feel like it's a little slow, but I felt like it was building tension. And so then the action sets, the action pieces, I think hit a lot harder because there were these, they let the director let the movie breathe, I think, at some critical moments. And it was a good story, a good plot, and I think the choices, I don't know about Pattinson, is that how you say
Robert
that?
Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson, he was a bit depressive, kind of a sad sack. I'm curious to see, like Deidre said, he spoke of hope. Curious to see how hopeful he looks in the next one.
Because they even did his makeup kind of like the Crows.
Yeah, no, and her
Comparison.
her comparison, thank you. Dialogue, yeah, is spot on. It felt like almost like you were watching The Crow 2, except for this time, The Crow 2, he becomes the Batman. But it was really. It was good for what it was. It was good. It was a dark version of Batman with a good story, and it was different, and there were some interesting plot twists. I think all of the casting pretty much was good. Overall, I think I'd give it a solid 8. It was very dark. It was very dark. It was very dark.